Like most Eeveelutions, Leafeon is one of the most beloved Pokemon out there, and just like every other Eeveelution that has been featured in this Worst Pokemon series, this video is bound to get a lot of hate, so let me just explain how this series works in case you're new and you're unaware. In the Worst Pokemon series, we analyze Pokemon from a competitive standpoint and determine if they are the worst Pokemon in a specific category or just simply the worst Pokemon overall. A competitive battle would mean something like a VGC tournament or a competitive Smogon style battle against an opponent with a competitively built team. This is very important to keep in mind since a competitive battle is extremely different than using a Pokemon in-game against gym leaders or against NPCs in something like the battle tree. Each Pokemon is also rated on a scale 1 to 5 based on their offense, defense, versatility, move pool, and overall viability. If a Pokemon doesn't excel in any of these categories, then it is seen to be a bad Pokemon and potentially the worst Pokemon out there. With all that out of the way, I am your host PaPaSea, and in this video we'll take an in-depth look at Leafeon and discuss if it is the worst grass-type Pokemon out there, as well as the worst Eeveelution. If you guys want to support the channel, make sure you guys leave a like as it helps the channel out tremendously. And subscribe with notifications on in case you are new so you don't miss a future upload. If you guys want to see a specific Pokemon featured on this series in the future, let me know in the comments down below. But please only recommend a Pokemon that is bad competitively, as well as a Pokemon that has not been featured in this series so far. If you guys want to see a full list of Pokemon that have been featured in this series so far, check out the playlist link in the description below. So taking a closer look at Leafeon, it is a mono grass type Pokemon introduced in Generation 4 with the abilities Chlorophyll and Leaf Guard. Leafeon has a stat line of 65 in HP, 110 in attack, 130 in defense, 16 special attack, 65 in special defense, and 95 in speed. All around, these stats really aren't so bad. 110 in attack is pretty good, and 130 in defense will help it take a lot of physical hits. Sadly, Leafeon is lacking a little bit in the special defense department, with only 65 HP backed by a 65 special defense stat, which is a little bit of an issue. 95 in speed isn't horrible as well, however it's just a little bit too low for this Pokemon in my opinion. If Leafeon had a speed stat of say 100 or more, it would be so much better, but 95 is at least manageable. You do have access to the ability Chlorophyll to boost your speed when the sun is up, which is Leafeon's best ability. Moving on to the positives, we have access to Swords Dance, one of the best setup moves in the game. 110 attack behind a Swords Dance is pretty scary. Next positive, like I just mentioned, 110 attack. That's actually pretty good, especially for a Pokemon featured in this series. You also have 130 defense, which is fantastic as well because it isn't too common that a Pokemon in the series has two stats of above 100. Having two of them attack and defense, pretty good on you, Leafeon. You also have access to Chlorophyll, which is a very good ability because behind your 95 speed stat in the sun, not too many out things will outspeed you, even if you're an adamant nature to boost your attack even more. This makes Leafeon a pretty decent sweeper in the sun. Leafeon of course has access to the general Eeveelution support moves, which are generally pretty good. These include moves like Wish, Baton Pass, Heal Bell, and Yawn, which all have their places on different Eeveelutions. Leafeon has pretty decent coverage as well for an Eeveelution, considering most Eeveelution's coverage is pretty terrible. You have X-Scissor, Knockoff, Aerial Ace, Leaf Blade, and Iron Tail, while most other Eeveelutions just have their stab move and then say Shadow Ball. This coverage on an Eeveelution is a lot better than the coverage that say Jolteon has. And now on to the negatives. Leafeon struggles heavily against Steel types and Fire types. Leafeon does not have a single move to hit those super effective unless you count Hidden Powers, but you only have 60 special attacks, so Hidden Power really isn't an option. And of course you are weak to Fire, which is only amplified if the sun is up, and Leafeon is best in the sun, so it's not really the best combination there. Leafeon also has poor special defense. This isn't the worst thing in the world, however it is a little bit annoying how your defense stat is pretty high and then your special defense is just paper thin. Leafeon's speed stat of 95 is just a little bit too slow outside of the sun. A speed stat of 100 would definitely be much better, as there are a lot of Pokemon in between that 90 to 100 range, and being able to outspeed or speed tie the many base 100 Pokemon will be pretty nice. There's also a lack of variety with this Pokemon. There's just not too many different moves to run on this Pokemon, and you're pretty forced to run a Swords Dance variant. Any other set, which we'll get into in a second here, really isn't as great. Moving on to the first set, I'm sure this is the set that a lot of you guys have in mind. We have Leafeon with either the Normalium Z or the Life Orb, it's up to you. Personally, I think Life Orb is a little bit better. Chlorophyll ability, max attack, max speed, jolly nature, with Swords Dance, Leaf Blade, Double Edge, and Knockoff. This is probably the best way to run this Eeveelution in my opinion. Although you could maybe sneak X-Scissor in there over Double Edge or something if you want to hit other grass types super effective. This set would obviously be better with a sun partner since you can take advantage of your chlorophyll ability, as unfortunately Leafeon doesn't have an ability that does anything outside of the sun. Moving on to the next set, we have a bulkier support set, which in my opinion isn't that great of a set, but it's really the only other option you have. We have Leafeon with the leftovers Impish Nature, max HP and max defense, take a lot of hits, Leaf Blade, Synthesis, Heal Bell, and Toxic. I like to think of this set as kind of like a poor man's Sylveon, as it functions similar to a pretty typical Sylveon, although you do have Synthesis Overwish, which is nice. However, overall it's just not as good as Sylveon in my opinion. The first set is a lot better than the second set, especially if you pair Leafeon with a sun Pokemon like Torkoal or any other Pokemon with access to Sunny Day, which there's a lot of. Now you could just run Sunny Day on Leafeon if you want, I guess, however then you'd be forced to either drop Swords Dance or a coverage move for it, since running both Sunny Day and Swords Dance really isn't that great since you most likely won't be able to get both of those moves off too effectively. It is possible, but not the most reliable thing. Moving on to the ratings, in terms of offense, I will give Leafeon a 3 out of 5. Leafeon's offense really isn't that bad at all. 110 in attack is pretty good, and 95 speed is more than manageable, especially when you have Chlorophyll behind that. The biggest hindrance to this Pokemon is its lack of coverage, although it could be worse. On to defense, I will give Leafeon a 2.5 out of 5 because Leafeon's defensive stat of 130 is pretty good, however its overall defense is just pretty mediocre. Leafeon isn't able to take too many special hits, and Grass really isn't all that great of defensive typing due to all of the common weaknesses that Grass types have. Now Leafeon's defense stat isn't horrible, but it's really not that great either, it's just pretty mediocre. On to versatility, I will give Leafeon a 2 out of 5 because sadly Leafeon just doesn't have too many different sets to warrant much versatility. The best set by far is the offensive set with Chlorophyll that we covered earlier, while the set with leftovers and just about anything else you can run really isn't as good. This Pokemon is by far best suited as a pure offensive Pokemon, which isn't exactly a horrible thing, but it would be nice if Leafeon could just do a little bit more. Moving on to Movepool, I'll give Leafeon a 2 out of 5 because Leafeon's Movepool really isn't that terrible, and it does have most of the same support moves as other Eeveelutions like we mentioned, as well as a better offensive Movepool than most other Eeveelutions, but this still really isn't all that great. Leafeon struggles heavily against fire types and steel types like I've been mentioning throughout this video, since they both resist Leafeon's stab, and Leafeon doesn't have access to any super effective move like Earthquake to hit them with. And on to Viability, I'll give Leafeon a 1.5 out of 5. Leafeon is a pretty bad Pokemon to be honest, but at least it has some form of viability, especially in the lower tiers of Smogon. I've always thought of Leafeon as one of the best of the worst, if that makes any sense, since it isn't completely useless. Sure, it could be better, but there are a lot of worse grass-type Pokemon out there, even in the lower tiers. In terms of improvements to make Leafeon better, give it Earthquake. That would be amazing, you could hit fire types, hit steel types, and it would be a much more reliable offensive Pokemon. A slightly higher speed set would be nice as well, so you aren't as reliant as Chlorophyll to outspeed everything. Something like even just 101 would be so much better. And last but not least, another ability that isn't sun-based. Not really sure what this could be, but I'm really not a fan of Pokemon that only have abilities that work in the weather. It basically means if the weather's not up, this Pokemon has no ability, which isn't good at all. And that is Leafeon. Let me know what you guys think of Leafeon in the comment section down below for a chance to have your comment featured in the next worst Pokemon video, like this comment right here. Personally, I think that although Leafeon is a pretty bad Pokemon, it is one of the better bad Pokemon out there. You can certainly argue that Leafeon is the worst Eeveelution competitively, although I would still give that title over to Glaceon personally. Thank you guys so much for watching, have a great rest of your day, I will see you guys next time, and bye bye.